So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's UWEcyber seminar. We're delighted to be with Bruce Gregory from Hub8. So he is the managing director of the Hub8, and he is also the director of CYNAM, so Cyber Cheltenham, and he's going to be talking to us today about this. I'm just going to mute somebody because somebody's coming through on my audio, so apologies for that. So with that said, over to Bruce.
Phil, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me this afternoon, and thanks for everyone for turning up. I see there's quite a few of you on the session today, so really good to meet you all. So yeah, my name's Bruce Gregory. I'm the managing director of Hub8, as Phil said, also a director of CYNAM, and generally very active, I guess, in the regional cyber ecosystem, and that's really focused on Cheltenham and Gloucestershire. Now, before I tell you about Hub8 and CYNAM, I think it's really important to establish why we've got such a thriving ecosystem in Cheltenham and Gloucestershire. And in case you didn't know, and I'm sure you all probably did, we've got a certain large government organisation, GCHQ, who are located here. Now, GCHQ has been in the region for over 60 years, but I think it was really when it opened its iconic building, which you probably all recognise as the Donut, back in 2003, 2004, it really became more public and more publicly aware that GCHQ was located in the region. And actually, since it opened that building, its mission, which is fundamentally, GCHQ has extraordinary powers to do extraordinary things to keep our country safe. And as we've all moved to use and adopt digital platforms in our day-to-day life, GCHQ's job has increased because of the demand for cyber. And what you probably maybe don't know is because GCHQ is here, and I should say GCHQ is the largest employer in the region. Because of its presence, we've got a really extraordinary supply chain. So we've got some of the largest tech giants, global tech giants that are located in Cheltenham and the region because they fundamentally supply services into GCHQ. And just to name a few of those tech giants, we've got the likes of BAE Systems, IBM, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Babcock, Microsoft. There are a few of our Apple employees around here. The list actually goes on, and it goes on considerably. And because we've got some major tech giants, we've also got a lot of startups and SMEs who supply into those tech giants. So we've got what is actually a really thriving ecosystem of companies that work in cyber in the region, but fundamentally they're here because GCHQ is located here. So I hope that gives you an idea of fundamentally why this region is such a hive of cyber activity. And now, so Phil mentioned I'm a director of CYNAM. So CYNAM Cyber Cheltenham, it's the UK's largest cyber cluster. And we established CYNAM about 4 years ago, and it was originally came out of a pub meetup group. And because actually there was such strong interest, we formed a company, a non-profit organisation, a KIC, to really run events to bring the community together. And for those of you who haven't or aren't aware of CYNAM, please look us up. We run 3 headline events each year. We engage with some amazing industry partners. We work very closely with NCSC, so the National Cyber Security Centre, and also some of the best tech companies in the world support our events. So if you haven't already attended a SINAM, please do. And then out of that, we've got Hub8, and so I'm the managing director of Hub8. So that's really my day job. And Hub8 is effectively the physical manifestation of this SINAM community, of this burgeoning cyber community that we have. So Hub8 is, well, fundamentally, it's a co-working space. I'm just going to share a few slides actually, so you can. Let's go to full screen. So I hope you can all see that. So Hub8, we set up Hub8 in 2019. It's got a clear mission to support fundamentally the cyber and tech sector locally. And we formed a strong network of partners to help really develop the sector locally. But I guess fundamentally what we do, and this is a visual of the space, and I'm obviously in Hub8 at this moment in time. We've got a really interesting mix, and I'll come back to this slide in a moment, of companies in Hub8. So we've got from these big tech giants such as IBM, some Alan Turing Institute, who do incredible work, but we've also got a thriving ecosystem of startups and SMEs. So Hub8 is really bringing this community together, and it's fundamentally a co-working platform. And what interests is a co-working platform to all you guys? Well, in any high growth tech sector, you need some critical components to enable companies to grow. And one of those are co-working spaces. They were fundamental in the growth of Silicon Valley. So spaces that companies, particularly tech companies, can use to grow without friction. And when I say without friction, if you are a tech company and you're 2 or 3 or 4 people, in a year's time, you might be looking at a growth of maybe you'll have a dozen, 18, 20 plus people. So you don't want to have to kind of rent a big office to accommodate that growth. And nor do you want to isolate yourself away into a kind of small office in where you don't have contact with a wider community. So that's what Hub8 is. It's a co-working space that brings together this vibrant community that we have here. So we've got the tech giants, the SMEs, and the startups. And furthermore, the momentum that we've got through the delivery of Hub8, we're actually now launching another innovation centre later this year in partnership with Cheltenham Borough Council and G1st LEP, and that's going to be a purpose-built innovation centre. And I think what we're really trying to do is change the perception of Cheltenham from quite a sleepy Regency town that you might come to retire to actually a town that's got a challenger city mentality with a thriving tech economy. And we need these kind of platforms such as this next space, the Hub8 Minster, that we'll be launching later this year to really enable that to happen. So this will be more space for our thriving tech businesses to locate. Now, I'm just going to go back to this screen, guys. So there's a lot of activity going on in Cheltenham to grow the cyber ecosystem and the cyber sector in the region. I think we all understand that cyber is such an important sector for the UK globally. So we are a global superpower when it comes to cyber, and we really need to maintain that status. So what we're really trying to do now is not just look at things from a very Cheltenham or Gloucestershire centric point of view, but understand how we can work together with other parts of the country that have a depth of knowledge in cyber to really increase the growth of the sector nationally. And to do that, we need to engage much closer, particularly with academia. And that's why it's really exciting to talk to all of you on the call today, because, well, how's this relevant to you guys? Well, we've got a lot of companies here growing at a phenomenal rate, but to really enable that growth, we need the right talent, they need the right people. So working closely with academia is a really important part to enable these companies to grow and this sector to grow. So, fundamentally, that's a good reason to be talking to you all, that there could be some amazing opportunities in Cheltenham and Gloucestershire with some of the great companies and organisations that we have here for a career. So I think that's something why you should be tuning in. But there's also a much wider ambition for the region, and again, some of you may have heard about this, but it's known as Cyber Central. So I'm just gonna Phil, could you just confirm to me that I'm sharing my screen okay?
I can see the Hub8 Minster slide. That's coming through.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint one now?
No, it's just showing the PDF with Hub8 Minster at the moment.
Okay, 1 second. Sorry, guys, let me just... Okay. So I'm just going to stop that sharing and I'm going to launch another slideshow. So bear with me for a moment, everyone. Okay. Phil, can you see that okay? Just to confirm with that one.
Yep, that one's fine.
Okay, everyone. So we've got, just to summarize, so we've got this vibrant ecosystem here. We've got GCHQ based here. We've got an amazing supply chain of companies here. And we need to grow what we're doing and increase the capability. And that's really the vision of what's been summarized in Golden Valley. And Golden Valley is well, it was spawned from when George Osborne visited GCHQ in 2015 and announced the government's commitment to cyber in Cheltenham. And since then, we're really developing this Golden Valley proposition into something that's actually becoming a reality, which I'm delighted to say. But to do that, we really need to understand what's happening here. And I think one of the interesting things about what we've been working on is the fact that we didn't really know how much capability we had in this region. Just a few stats for you, and stats are always fascinating. So we've got the largest concentration of cyber businesses in the UK outside of London in this region. We've got in Gloucestershire 6 times the national average, and in Cheltenham we've got 11 times the national average. So there's an amazing depth of knowledge in cyber in this region. It's also an incredibly valuable sector. So these are very, very highly valued jobs. So that's going to really deliver economic growth for both the region and the UK nationally. We've got such high value employment growth. So the growth of this sector is so significant. And to support that growth, we really need the pipeline of talent. So again, something for you guys to really consider in terms of if you're looking for opportunities. I think this region and the wider area certainly hold a lot of opportunities for you all. But Cyber Central or Golden Valley is a development which is going to be providing brand new facilities for this region. I think you probably might have a perception of Gloucestershire as a very rural county, and you'll be right. And for us to enable the growth in the cyber sector, we have to deliver more homes, and that means, flats, affordable housing, a whole range of infrastructure to enable this growth to happen. Now, I've already mentioned that, obviously GCHQ is here, and it's a really critical reason why we have this cyber capability. But I think now what we're really establishing is government commitment to the region and to really establish this ecosystem and enable it to become a world beater. So I mentioned we've got a great combination of government. When I say government, that's namely GCHQ. Industry, so the pipeline that we have because government's here. We really need to work on how we make sure academia is really engaged with what's going on here, because that supplies us with the talent to enable the sector to grow. And I think this illustrates it really well in terms of if we look at the region, Gloucester, Cheltenham, Golden Valley, within a very close proximity, we've got some of the best academic institutions in the UK. If we look down towards yourselves in Bristol, slightly to Wales and Cardiff, Oxford, Cambridge, Milton Keynes, Warwick, Birmingham, all close to this area. And we need to work with these academic institutions to enable this sector to grow in Gloucestershire. And that also links up with an initiative called the Western Gateway, which is really how we bring this proposition of the Southwest together. We've got some incredible capability here that brings together government, academia, and industry. And the Western Gateway is kind of like your version of the Northern Powerhouse or the Midlands Engine. So the Western Gateway is a way of bringing together the Southwest and presenting this cyber capability to government, really. And just some visuals on kind of Cyber Central and the vision here. So it's really about aligning locally, and that comes from Cheltenham Borough Council, its vision of making Cheltenham the cyber capital of the UK. How that aligns with G1st LEP and its local industrial strategy in terms of really, they've identified cyber tech, or the cyber tech sector as it's called, as the highest growth sector for the region. So there's a lot of emphasis on cyber for Gloucestershire. And then that links in obviously with the UK cyber strategy and the understanding that the cyber sector is a massive growth sector for the UK. Just a few visuals in terms of where it will be located. You probably see my cursor here, centre of Cheltenham. Let me just flick through this one. So probably recognise that building, big donut, GCHQ. This is where Golden Valley and Cyber Central will be located. So it's a really ambitious scheme, big area. It also is looking at how we work, because one of the things that we need to do is change the perception of the town and the region, as I said. And lots of people view Cheltenham and Gloucestershire as quite a prosperous region, but actually we've got some real pockets of high deprivation that we also really need to address. So, as part of Cyber Central and Golden Valley, we're looking at how we can work with these areas of high deprivation and really have a long-term impact on these areas, and a really positive one. Just to give you a sense of the scale of what we're doing in terms of Golden Valley, City of London. So it's a big site. Now, slightly random side you might think, but this is Shenzhen town in the 1950s in China, and this is it now. So in the space of 70 years, it's grown to quite literally a global metropolis. Now, we're not saying that Golden Valley is going to be a global metropolis, but there's certainly ambition to establish a really thriving urban environment in the region. So and again, it's back to looking at what we're doing and changing the perception of the town and the region from perhaps a sleepy town to come and retire to a town that's got a challenger city mentality with a thriving tech economy. But to do that, we really need to work together with the wider region. So particularly looking at academia, as I said, down to Bristol, and then looking at the other great areas of depth of knowledge that we have in the UK. which is mainly London and Manchester. I mean, some of you might be aware that GCHQ obviously now has a presence in Manchester also. So we really need to join up these areas and depth of knowledge that we have to pull together a stronger proposition for cyber for the country. Now, I'm just going to stop sharing. Phil, am I back to kind of normal mode? Just want to make sure that's all okay.
Yep, that looks good.
So I've kind of given you a bit of an overview of kind of what's going on and hopefully a bit of the rationale behind it. But I really wanted to use some of this time as a bit of a Q&A, if that's okay, because often it would be really good to speak more openly with all of you about what's going on. So if we're able to open the floor up, that would be really useful.
Absolutely. So as Bruce has said, well, thank you very much, Bruce. That was really interesting to get the overview of what's happening. And as Bruce has said, also, if you've got questions, please do use the chat, or please do switch on your mics and speak to give you questions. It really is about hearing from you about what, your thoughts and questions around this. And just to kick it off, I mean, we've heard about so Cheltenham being this hub of activity hinged all around GCHQ, and I suppose really, it's thinking about in your lifetimes where you're at university now. Some of you might be undergraduates, some of you might be postgraduates, but where do you want to see your career go after your time at university? And given that Cheltenham is 30 minutes up the road from Bristol, it's a nearby area. We are part of the Gloucestershire region, so for those who aren't aware, UWE is South Gloucestershire, so we are very much in and part of this. It's really important to know what's happening outside of university and what effectively is on our doorstep. So there are some fantastic opportunities with this. Umesh has said any internship in Golden Valley. I could probably give an answer for that, but Bruce, do you want to kick it off?
Well, I mean, Golden Valley is essentially encompassing a development that the Borough Council are working on. But I think it's really important to outline that Golden Valley will be an amazing facility to enable this sector to grow. But the important thing is the community that will grow into that sector. And so that's what we're doing. Golden Valley really started some time ago. And what we're doing is just building momentum and scale so that when that does launch, there's a vibrant ecosystem, a community of businesses and organizations that will occupy that. And that space will enable it to grow even more. So no, there's not an opportunity at an internship in Golden Valley, but I think the point being is that there are lots of probably opportunities for internships with companies who are part of this community and ecosystem that will really be driving Golden Valley forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The thing to add on to that, if it's okay, Golden Valley potentially is a business park with lots of organizations occupying it. The thing that's trying to make it different, the thing that Hub8 do, the thing that Golden Valley are doing, is you've got all of these like-minded businesses in the same area. How do we get them talking? So one of the big pieces around the Cyber Cheltenham project is around the innovation center, so that actually these companies do mix. They do get to see, right, okay, how can we bring these ideas together to benefit beyond? And the question really is for how you as students want to interact with that, whether it be speaking with companies to get project ideas, contributing in that way, which then might lead on to internships. But it's really about having a network of organizations who want to talk to each other.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting, Phil, and everyone here, the something to highlight is that this sector has been because of the nature of the work that goes on, particularly in this region, you find that there hasn't been a lot of what we call innovation. But basically, because everyone is sort of operating in a very secure space, often in what's called as a high-side facility. So high-side is a fully secure facility. The donut is basically the biggest high-side facility around. And often these types of facilities don't enable innovation. And what we're doing is trying to break down some of those barriers. And Hub8 is a great example of that, where we've got actually lots of companies that mix in the same space. And because of that, we've got a few of them, some great examples. I think it's really important to base this with some examples, because we also work very closely with NCSC, so the National Cyber Security Centre, and it's got the NCSC run a cyber accelerator in Cheltenham. So that attracts some of the best startups in cyber to the town. And then we've got a number of those startups who've come through that program and they come and join Hub8. And there's a few of them that have actually grown from 3 or 4 people to that kind of 20 plus, because they've been in Hub8, because they've been able to meet with either, some of the tech giants that supply into GCHQ and get contracts there. So it's enabled them to grow. So what we're really trying to do is break down some of those historic barriers that we've had in the region in terms of the secrecy side of things, which is understandable, and enable more innovation. And I think what's also really interesting is how GCHQ is also looking to engage more and be more active in the community, because it understands that for it to evolve as an organization, it needs to also be more agile, and it needs to be more understanding of what's happening. And that can't always be done in a very kind of restricted high side environment. So I think over the next few years, we're really going to see some significant changes to this sector, particularly locally, that will enable much greater innovation and enable, I think, much better interaction, particularly with academia. Just to put it clear, for GCHQ, as Phil, you probably know this better than I do, that it's quite difficult for it to engage with academia. And so that's something that we're really working to try and help it do better. And that's something that it really wants to do. So I think it's going to be an interesting few years.
Absolutely. And I think just picking up on your points there, there really has been a shift in the last couple of years around how do, GCHQ, yes, they've got a lot of good things going on internally, but they know that they need to be reaching out a little bit more, as you've said, and actually, not necessarily lowering their guards, but recognizing that, there's a lot going on outside of their walls that would be of benefit to them. Yeah. And a prime example of it is actually how NCSC came to be, because NCSC, for those who might not know this, NCSC is essentially the public facing side of GCHQ in order to break down those barriers, in order for NCSC to be able to come to UWE, to be able to go to Hub8, to be able to just see what's going on out there. So that in itself shows that NCSC, well, rather let me say, GCHQ want that to be happening, hence why the NCSC came to be. So it's very interesting that that's happening in academia through the certification programs that they run, and as a result of the certification programs, we are becoming more and more involved in what NCSC is doing, and as a result, what GCHQ are doing.
Yeah, Phil, really, I know that you've got your finger on the pulse here, which is really good to hear. But it's also about that shift with, much of that work that they do needs to go inside that building, because like I said, to summarize it, they've got extraordinary powers to do extraordinary things, but much of that needs to happen in a certain environment. But there's a lot of the work that it's doing as an organization that can now happen in different environments, in what we call a sort of a low side, unsecure environment. What does that mean? Well, okay, it means that perhaps you don't need a full DV clearance to work on these projects, which means that it's breaking down barriers for people to actually work in this sector, because you don't need a full DV clearance, which is not an easy thing to get. It's costly, it's restrictive. So it's the shift in actually some of the way in which GCHQ is working will have a really positive effect on the sector and make it far more available and inclusive for people to access it. Hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've got a hand up from Ian and we've got a question from Jason. Ian, do you want to speak?
I was curious about your take on geography. And to put it quite simply, I would always say that if I'm thinking of the cyberspace, I think of a triangle with Cheltenham at the top and Cardiff and Bristol at the bottom. But you seemed to be mentioning London and Manchester more. Now, I know from an NCSC perspective, yes, but in terms of primes and SMEs in the cyberspace, the density in that triangle is colossal.
It is.
And secondly, you also talked almost exclusively about the west of England, whereas I always think, I mean, to put my cards on the table, I tend to attend the South Wales cybersecurity cluster because that's where I live. And Phil tends to attend Cynam because that's where he lives. And we work in Bristol in the middle. But I always think of Wales in the west rather than just the west.
Yeah, and sorry if I didn't articulate that well. I mean, I think the Western Gateway is a great example of how we're trying to join up this wider triangle. You mentioned sort of Bath, Bristol, going up to Gloucestershire and Cheltenham. You know, I think we need to join that up, but we also need to join it up with South Wales, where we've got incredible cyber capability there and a burgeoning community. And actually, in what we're doing with Cynam now is working very closely with DCMS. And what we're doing on that piece of work is joining up the clusters. So we're all working together. And it's not just about joining up with Bath and Bristol and that cluster and the South Wales with John Davies, obviously, and the good work that he's doing there. But we need to look nationally and join it up nationally. And that's looking at London, it's looking at Scotland, where we've got a really good cyber ecosystem. It's looking at the Northeast, Newcastle University does some great stuff. GCHQ has strong presence in the north as well, particularly in Manchester, the northwest. So yes, there are lots of layers to this, I guess, is the answer. That we need to look at it quite locally in terms of Cheltenham, making sure that we're doing as well as we can. But then how do we join it up regionally, Gloucestershire? How do we work wider in the southwest and Wales, and then nationally? So there's lots of layers to it. So there are complications there. But I think what we're trying to do is join it all up. So it's a stronger proposition. So we don't have each of these areas geographically kind of trying to do the same stuff and work against each other. We've all got great capability, and I think that capability will be stronger if we actually work closely together.
Excellent. So we've got a question from Jason. He says, hi Bruce, great talk, thank you. I run a small software development business in West Midlands. I'm currently studying an MSc in cyber and want to move a business in that direction. How does Cynam work in terms of working with small businesses to become part of Golden Valley community?
So Jason, thanks for the question. So I think it would be what we love to do in Cynam is really support startups and SMEs. So I'd be really interested, Jason, to learn a bit more about your business and what we do and how we can enable your business to plug into Cynam and the community that we have here. So in terms of, I would also urge you to look at relocating here as well. Of course, I'm very passionate about the town and the region and said it would be a really good thing to do. But that aside, look, send us an email at Cynam. Look me up on LinkedIn, and I'll obviously connect you wherever I can. But yeah, get in contact with Cynam. It's a really good route into the community. We also do a great cyber showcase at each of our events, which is focusing on startups, where we really showcase startups in the region. So that might be something we could look at doing with your company.
Excellent. Callum's asked, hi Bruce, wondering where we are able to have a deeper look at upcoming opportunities. Is there anything in that space that Hub8 or Cynam would offer?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of companies that are looking for talent, quite frankly. And this is where I think we need to really, these kind of conversations at the start of better relationships between academia and industry. Because we've got industry saying we just can't find the people, and then you've got academia saying we've got some amazing people, so work it out, we just need to join them up. Yes, but this is where we, Phil, you, I, Cynam, Golden Valley needs to work better to enable those opportunities. So yes is the answer, but it's kind of on our shoulders a bit to make that work a bit better.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is definitely something that I'm quite keen to see. You know, we've got links with Hub8. We know that there's companies who are based with Hub8, as you say, who are looking for employers and looking for staff. And I mean, one of the ideas, just to float this for students who are on the call, project ideas. You know, if you're doing a final year project, or maybe you're preparing for a final year project next year, or if you're doing a master's dissertation and you're thinking, right, I've got this idea. Now let's see what industry thinks of it. You know, maybe if you've got an initial idea, you could ping it across to Bruce potentially, and he could say, oh, we've got a company who's doing X and they're in Hub8 already. Maybe we link you up. Yeah. And it's that kind of thing. You know, that's what we want to try and facilitate, because if there's students doing really interesting projects and there's companies doing really interesting projects and they have some relevance together, then, you know, it would make sense to link up. Then you can have some real world impact about how you derive that project and all the rest of it. The company, they might benefit from the ideas you're producing, but they might also turn around and say, hey, I have a job at the end of the day. Anything like that. And that's just one of the ideas. And there are lots of other things in terms of running events where companies are showcasing what they're up to, students are showcasing what they're up to. But the bottom line is we want to link students and companies together.
I'm just going to put in my Cynam email address to everyone here. I'm being quite brave here, but please, if you do have any questions, it's there in the chat. Be delighted to answer.
Excellent, thank you. Right, so we've got a question. How can students be part of what is happening, like an application portal or guide, something or somewhere to get started? So I mean, I guess if I kick off that one, it's about being part of signing up for Cynam. I think one of the things that's been fantastic the last year is having Cynam online. I've said this one before, I'll say it on the call. You know, typically getting there face to face has actually been a challenge because of small people and all that kind of thing. And actually having it as an online event means that you can reach a much wider audience for being able to broadcast it. And just being able to see what's going on in the community in that way has been excellent. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, and Phil, I mean, to add to that, you know, what we're really passionate at Cynam is engaging with the next generation. It's engaging with academia. It's kind of front and center of what we want to do now. I hope you've seen that, particularly in the last few events, how students are far more prominent and up front. So there's no reason why we couldn't get some of you here as part of a Cynam event, and I would strongly encourage that. So yes, Cynam is a great route to really connect with this community, and a great vehicle in which we can enable that collaboration between government and sort of GCHQ, because you'll see at each of our event we will have a speaker from NCSC or GCHQ there, and we got great headline speakers. So the next event that we haven't announced, but I'll give you a bit of an insight into what it's about. It's going to be on smart cities. So how digital infrastructure can really enable smart cities, and the importance that cyber plays in that capability. It's going to be headlined with CGI. So CGI are a very prominent local, big global company, come from Canada, but they've got strong presence in Cheltenham and Gloucestershire because they work with GCHQ. So they're going to be headline sponsoring it. So let's see if there's any way in which we could get UWE as a part of that one. So let's pick that one up offline as well, Phil.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic. And I mean, if if in the future when we're back to physical events, I know that Hub8 runs some excellent physical events. There are a couple before lockdown, if I recall.
Yeah.
It's based in the town centre of Cheltenham. It's 30 minutes away from Bristol. So by all means, students, if you want the opportunity to actually visit Hub8, I'm sure as and when we can do such things, that would be.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually, let's take a few actions. It's always good to have a few actions from these things. And one of them would be to organise, a bit of a visit and engage with what's going on here, so you can really see it at first hand. Just so you know, I think the next event we're planning to be a sort of hybrid one, anticipating that we will be allowed to convene up to 30 people. So it's going to be a mix between virtual and hybrid. So we're really excited about that as well.
Excellent. So Ian said, yeah, as a department, we have a number of active smart city researchers. So if you want to link up on those, ping an email to Ian. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in smart cities, and Bristol has smart city initiatives going on. We know that that's going on up and down the country. And I'm guessing Cyber Central has visions of being a smart city in its own right or something.
It certainly does. It's going to be kind of hopefully part of the fabric of that development is its smart capability, and that's the exciting thing, that we have the opportunity to truly build something with groundbreaking technology and try stuff out. So that's definitely part of the vision for Golden Valley and Cyber Central.
Okay, so I guess if we think about Cyber Central as this new area on the west of Cheltenham, it's about a kind of a call to tech industry to come and situate there, be part of this community. And if we imagine that to come in five years or whatever it might be, something along those lines, I guess the question is, what do you hope to see that makes it different from anywhere else?
So one of the things that we're really passionate about is that it's just not another business park. Okay, we don't need another business park. It's great. Okay, so Cyber Central is responding to lots of things, and one of the great things that it's responding to is the fact that we need to grow our population in this region, which gives us the ability to really create these new urban environments, because the demand is there. So we've got the demand for this kind of scheme. Now the ambitions are really high in terms of the level of what kind of buildings will be built there, in terms from a green energy focus and also from a digital and connectivity focus. So we've got the ability to pull together next generation kind of technology to deliver this, which I think is fascinating. But for me, it's how we bring the community together. And that means it's no longer about GCHQ as the kind of propping all of this up, which at the moment, everyone's here because GCHQ's here. What we need to do is develop an ecosystem that's complementary to that, but not dependent on it. So we've got massive growth potential in cyber as a sector, and that means commercial growth. You don't have to just supply into government and get government contracts to grow your business. There's big commercial opportunities. So for me, it's looking at, right, how do we get, a major, an Uber or, a Google, someone of that scale, to actually look at this area and have it as a location, because I think that would be a game changer. And it's all about looking at it with a really global vision, and so we need to attract those big global companies. I said Microsoft are here, and it's how do they grow their capability here that's not just about supplying into GCHQ. And the same with IBM. We've got some amazing companies here, but can they look at this region as a place to grow, and not just grow because they've got a government contract, because they want to grow because it's a great place to be. And that's what Cyber Central provides, that environment, which is a really great place for people to be. So hopefully that will encourage them to sort of increase their scale Does that make sense? I haven't really summarized that, Phil, but
absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. I mean, you know, it's that whole piece of how do we get these companies talking to each other? How do we make best use of that innovation center so that, you know, they are actually collaborating and, you know, working for the greater good, so to speak, so that as a nation we develop our capability. Another question then is, you know, for the benefit of the students then that are on the call, you know, they're sat thinking, right, I'm undergraduate or I'm postgraduate, I'm studying cybersecurity or a related subject. What's the best advice you could give them as someone who in a year or 2 years, say, would be entering into the cybersecurity industry, or hoping to enter the cybersecurity industry? Any advice that you've got for them?
Well, I think firstly, if you've come through UWE, then good job, because you're in a very good position in terms of just having those qualifications. And you know, that's really important. It's really important because it's a competitive industry, as we know. Advice, and I guess this is probably less cyber specific, because there's one thing I really need to stress here, Phil, is that I don't come from a technical cyber background. You know, I didn't study a cyber degree. I don't actually have a degree. you know, so for me, this would be quite a personal point and less related to cyber per se. And there's a few fundamental things. I think there's never any harm in asking. I can tell you that. It's amazing how people shy away because they might think they're not good enough or just a bit shy. God, if you ask and you persist, you'll get places. I can tell you that. So that's kind of basic for me. And if you are asking and you're persistent, and you're persistent, you usually, that means you're passionate about what you do. So I think that's crucial in any sector, regardless of cyber, technology generally. A passion for that will always come through. So yeah, passion, and just don't be afraid to ask. I know that it's quite unspecific, but I didn't come through a kind of cyber background here, so it's quite a general one.
That's absolutely perfect. That's absolutely perfect, because I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, it is about passion. You know, if you're saying, right, how do I get an internship? How do I get an opportunity in the community around Cheltenham and Gloucestershire area? It's about demonstrating that passion. You know, if you are working in cybersecurity as a domain, you know, what's happening today could be very different next week, could be very different next month. It is, you know, there are new challenges presenting themselves, and that goes for tech in general, doesn't it? So how you demonstrate, you know, well, hopefully you are passionate. You know, it's not a case of faking that. You are passionate, and it's about, as Bruce has absolutely said, you know, asking questions, be inquisitive, because nobody knows it all. You know, so it's about showing, well, I don't know it all, but I want to know it all. You know, I want to know. I want to keep learning. So if you can think, right, that's the kind of thing you want to develop. And again, you know, that comes back to the company situated in Hub8. You know, they don't know it all, you know, but they know someone who might. You know, they can network and communicate and talk with each other. So the biggest thing to emphasize, and I'll say this all the time, is about, you know, if you're passionate about a subject, that's, you know, that's defining what it is you want to do. Then it's about just talk with people. You know, find people to talk to say, right, do you know this, or do you know someone else I can talk to about this? The more you can demonstrate that passion and interest, that's the best way of getting into cybersecurity as a career path, so to speak. There was one other point I was going to make there, and I've completely gone blank. But well, that was it. And I think Bruce's point actually about I've not followed a traditional cybersecurity path is also a really important one to emphasize, because, you know, if you look at the people working in cybersecurity today, most of them, I'd say, haven't done the degree that you've done. You know, they'll say, oh, well, you know, I was working 20 years ago as a network engineer and suddenly my role evolved, or I was working 20 years ago as doing something else entirely and my role evolved, you know. And a lot of people, you know, this goes back to the whole, you know, how do I develop a career in cyber? Well, there is no one set answer there. A lot of people who work in cybersecurity today, they didn't, you know, at the age of 18, they didn't say, right, that's it, I'm going to go work in cyber. It didn't really cross their mind. It's something that has evolved over time. So I think that's the great thing about it as an industry. And again, you know, the likes of the people in Hub8 in Cyber Cheltenham, you really do have diversity and a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. So again, you know, bring you know, bear that in mind when you're thinking, you know, this is an industry I want to be involved in, because it actually is lots of different people from lots of different walks of life, which I think is what makes it really interesting.
And we use cyber very broadly as well. You know, it's tech, isn't it, basically? But you know, cyber is a kind of a buzzword. But there's so much AI activity that goes on locally as well. You know, so many different and complementary sort of parts that and paths you can discover. So it's not being too narrow in that set.
Absolutely, absolutely, excellent. Right, I've not seen any more questions pop up, and we are coming up on time. Are there any last questions that anyone wants to quickly type into the chat or speak? Let's see if anything comes in. Nevertheless, Bruce has provided his email address for you. So if you do have questions and you want to follow up with Bruce, I'm sure Bruce would be happy. Or if you want to ping them to me and I can get in touch with Bruce for you, that's absolutely fine as well. So if there's no further questions, then I'll just wrap up by saying thank you ever so much, Bruce, for joining us today. It's really interesting to hear what's happening in Gloucestershire as a region. Is obviously, you know, a lot of activity in cybersecurity. It is essentially a neighbour, if not really part of us. UWE is South Gloucestershire. I like to stress that point. We are a part of Gloucestershire. And students, as I say, you know, if this is something which you're thinking, yeah, that sounds really interesting, I want to know more, you know, either reach out to myself, reach out to Bruce, and you know, we'll tell you more. Absolutely. So with that said, thank you ever so much, Bruce, for joining us today. Thank you all students for being able to join us as well, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for your time. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Bruce. Bye for now.
Thank you.